What's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. So earlier today, I put up this poll, and I wanted to hear what you guys thought in regards to a comparison that I thought out of nowhere that was not wrestling related in regards to the question, but wrestling related, because I wanted to make a metaphoric comparison. And you guys did exactly what I thought you were going to do, which was perfect. As soon as I seen the people doing it, I was like, yes, it's exactly what I thought you were going to do. See, that was a trick question in regards to the polling. I actually had one person go out of his way to explain to me why he thought, for an example, someone in the position losing $5 out of $10 was in a worse situation in comparison to a person losing $50 out of $100. And that's exactly my point that I was making. What I said in the post, and I quote, I said, what would you be in more fear of? I said, what would you, the individual, be more in fear of? I didn't ask you what was your thoughts on this versus that. I said, what would you be in more fear of? And the first thing you did, all of you did for the most part, is compare your situation to the next person's, which is a perfect representation of what I talk about when in regards to the tribalism and professional wrestling nowadays. You're so hell-bent on looking at, oh, well, I mean, yeah, this situation is bad, but look at that situation over there. Oh, yeah, look at WWE sucks right now, but look at AEW. Yeah, AEW sucks, but look at AEW. That's not the way it should be, because in the end of the day, you're letting these two companies get away with murder in regards to the creative structure in professional wrestling nowadays, the booking structure in professional wrestling nowadays. And I'm not stupid. I would definitely say, when looking online, at least from my eyes, it seems like I see more of the tribalism coming from the AEW side. I will absolutely say that, but it's not to say that it doesn't come from the WWE side also. But that's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is both companies have shitty creative directions in comparison to how they used to be back in the days. And it's not all shitty, obviously. It's not all shitty. But even the ones that aren't shitty, it's like you're buying your time. You know, I have this comparison as far as another metaphor that I want to talk about, and I made this comparison plenty of times before in the past, where I will say you have a snail and you have a car, and the car goes 10 miles an hour and the snail goes 10 inches a mile, or 10 inches an hour, I guess is probably best to say, right? They're both going to get to the same destination in an hour. The only difference is the distance is slower. So one is going at a longer distance, but really, really fast, and it's exciting. And the other one, yeah, they're not going so far, but it's a shorter distance, and they're going slower. Same destination, but one is fast, and it's exciting. There's wind blowing through your hair and all this. The other one, well, same time. They don't have to go so far, but, well, it's boring. It's boring. That's what I'm alluding to when talking about the stories that people let these wrestling companies get away with, because, well, at least it's not the other wrestling company. What the fuck is wrong with you guys who think like that? And I see it all the time in my own comment section. Whenever I criticize AEW, for an example, it's, well, you're a WWE fanboy this, you're a WWE fanboy that. Whenever I criticize WWE, well, you're an AEW fanboy. You know, I had someone call me DR from New York because I praised AEW a couple of times. And it's like, there's nothing you could really do about that in the end of the day, because these people, this mindset It's harmful to professional wrestling, and it's harmful to the growth of professional wrestling. And it does a lot more damage than any of the smarks could possibly do. None of the flippy dippy New Japan Pro Wrestling fans can never do more damage to a wrestling company than these tribalist marks, because they're letting the wrestling companies get away with murder in regards to how a storyline should be actually conducted, or say a rivalry should be conducted, or a superstar or a character should be conducted going forward from a creative standpoint. Right? Because there are so many things that are put in front of them as far as what they feel they can get away with, right? Oh, well, this little detail right here, because, we could go the extra mile to kind of be a little bit more innuendo about what we can do with this character in regards to, say, like, for an example, I'll just throw out an example, right? You have the New Day, and they're getting super duper stale. They've been stale for the better part of 5 years, maybe 6, 7, I don't know how many years, depending on what you want to say. Let's just say subjectively 3 or 4 years, right? Now, the smart thing would do, at least for me, would be to go on a different approach. Something a little bit more edgy, right? But why do that in the end of the day when, well, what's the incentive, right? What's the incentive when we're still getting paid? What's the incentive from a fan standpoint when, okay, yeah, we could go the extra mile, but who's our competition, right? You have AEW, and they can do the same thing. They know that they're stagnant. They know that they're boring at the moment, and they know there are certain elements they can take within their characters as far as the approach is concerned, as far as the storyline is concerned. And they can go ahead and be a little bit more edgy, a little bit more daring, if you will. But they won't do it. Why? Because what's the incentive? We're AEW fanboys. Tony Khan recognizes this. He sees it within his audience. That's why he always has to throw out, well, this is for my niche audience. This is for the pro wrestling fan. As if WWE fans aren't pro wrestling fans. No. AEW fans in particular are pro wrestling fans. So why try? Why go out of my way and try when I know they're going to be right here? Because we're not that company. And that goes to the WWE fanboys also. We're not that company. You can't let these promoters get away with stuff like that, man. You can't. These storylines that you see nowadays, even the good ones, they could be so much better if you sent a message. You can't sit here all the time trying to play this tribalist game of we're not that company and we're not this company, so we have to support this company because we're against that company. And if you say anything bad about this wrestler, you say anything bad about this storyline, you call this wrestler overrated, you say anything bad about this, well, you happen to be on the side of the opposite company. Or better yet, if you just say straight up that you hate both companies, well, then you just hate professional wrestling in general. Never mind the fact that I come from an era of professional wrestling that I've been holding on to for the longest, that keeps me to be a professional wrestling fan. It was never like that back in the days. When it was WCW and WWE, it was almost like I don't want to say a camaraderie for the most part. I don't want to say it like that. Maybe a camaraderie as far as, like, say, the wrestling fans is considered. I feel like the wrestling fans back in the days were the ones who were kind of doing the whole kumbaya stuff, and the wrestlers were the ones who were going at it, more in particular in the administrative spots, right? Versus today, it's like the complete opposite. You have AEW and WWE wrestlers who are playing the kumbaya role, while the wrestling fans are the ones who are at war. And you could probably blame that more so on the accessibility of technology, especially from a social media standpoint, because the internet existed 25 years ago, and it wasn't like this during the Monday Night Wars. But there was an expectation, at least from a pro wrestling fan, where it's like, if this company isn't going to do it for us, well, we'll just switch the channel and go watch the other company. It wasn't, if this wrestling company doesn't do it for us, we're going to stick to our guns and stand by their side because they need us. We are a part of this war and we need to stick it to the other company. No. That wasn't the expectation. The expectation back then was, well, I mean, if you guys suck, I'll just go watch WCW. Well, WCW, you suck right now. I'm just going to go watch WWE. And the product, us as fans worldwide, benefited from that. Because what that told us is that these companies were always going to stand 10 toes on their feet. Right? Even if it means going out of their way to combat each other, ruin some friendships, it still meant that their mindset was to put on the best product to avoid us from switching to a different company, because there was no like fandomship in regards to that. You may get obviously a couple of clicks here and there. Like I know some of the Southern fans wouldn't really go out of their ways to watch WWE, right? And I know there's some probably Northerner fans who probably look at the Southern wrestling and they say to themselves, But even then, I wouldn't put that too far past them. And when you get around 96, 97, when the NWO was a thing, you could probably make that argument probably prior to 94, before Hulk Hogan came into the picture. But 96, 97, when WCW was worldwide, I don't think the argument can be made. But that's my overall point when talking about the storylines and the creative. There are so many things that you can take into context and you can use that in order to promote something that everybody got along with wanting to watch. And if you didn't like it, you could just switch the channel and watch the different programming. And if they didn't do it, you switch to a different show and you go see whether or not that wrestling show finally has some programming to combat what they didn't have. And it just goes back and forth. And that's when the pro wrestling business was at its healthiest. Not having a bunch of fanboys defend a shitty storyline or defend a shitty wrestler or defend a shitty decision just because you happen to be on that team, just because that's what you're representing. Do you think that's a good way to look at things? That's a great business model? No, that's accepting laziness. That's accepting mediocrity. Like I said, you go back to my poll, it's a perfect representation of what I felt was going to be the case and be the mindset of what you guys are going to talk about. Rather than focusing on your own circumstances, like I asked you to do in regards to what you feel is, in your best understanding and for your betterment, for the betterment of yourself, why you feel that this is the worst position. Now, I didn't ask you to compare these two. I asked you what was the worst position. And instead of actually telling me why this is the worst position specifically, you went out of your way to go compare it and you played a whataboutism. All of you played a whataboutism. There was no whataboutism back then. You either had a program or you didn't have the program. And it's even worse also because even on top of those arguments, even with the comparison of what I talked about with the car and the snail, I'll say something on the lines of, well, they could have done something a little bit different tonight, right? There was no need to go out of your way for I'll use AEW as an example. When we talk about the wrestlers who go out of their way to do specifically just the wrestling in order to build up for certain matches, it's like, well, you didn't have to go down that path. There were certain ways that you could have got to the same destination, but it could have been a lot more funner, right? Because everybody, at the end of the day, is going to use wrestling in order to promote wrestling. And I don't want to see that, at least from me. I don't want to see that. Back in the days, it wasn't just wrestling promoting for the sake of wrestling to get to some destination. No, the destination was the wrestling. It was the promos. It was the vignettes. It was the angles. It was the pomp and circumstances. It was the music. It was the presentation that coincided with each other. And then eventually the finale came, the wrestling. The finale came, the wrestling. And the worst part about it is that it's not as if we don't get good segments. The worst part about it is not as if we don't get great angles for that week, for those 2 weeks. I don't want it for that week. I don't want it for 2 weeks. I want it for the overall program going into a big pay-per-view, or a pay-per-view in general, or a PLE, however you like to refer to it, so I can feel like I'm getting my money's worth. Just picking and choosing what direction you want to go into. Picking and choosing. No, there is no picking and choosing unless that picking and choosing, involves going full throttle, 100 miles per hour in every segment. You can go 100 miles per hour, but understand that there are different paths you can take that will allow you to go 100 miles per hour. Does that make any sense? Yeah, you can make the argument that going 100 miles per hour is going to get you pulled over by the cops. But there are different areas that you can take where going 100 miles per hour, you'll be fine. There's a reason why your car allows you to go that fast. You can't do it for every road. You can't do it for the majority of roads. But there are roads that you can choose to go down that path, and it's okay. Well, maybe 100 miles per hour might be a little bit too fast. 75 miles per hour. Can we say that? There's this thing in the world. It's called opportunity cost. The definition is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. So for an example, you choose to want to save money on candles or on your light bill, your electricity, right? So you decide to spend a shit ton of money on candles, thinking that spending all that money on candles is gonna replace your electricity bill. Not understanding all the things that come with that electricity, for the most part, could probably help you in the long run in regards to making back that money if used appropriately, and if you actually engage with whatever your electricity bill is going to allow you to engage with in order to, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you might need that light, and you might it's more accessible for you to use that electricity or that light in order to type on a computer, to send an email, for an example, rather than having to go to the postage store to go buy a post stamp or having to fax it off or something along the lines of that, right? Just an example. I feel like opportunity cost in professional wrestling is happening right now at the moment when it comes to storylines. Whether you're talking about, say for an example, last night on Monday Night Raw, where you had Cody Rhodes talking smack about The Rock and Roman Reigns, whereas they just had The Rock and Roman Reigns on Thursday. They didn't show up on Friday. You could have easily had Rock show up on Monday, but I guess it wasn't in the cards, right? Instead, we get this in the middle of the show with Seth Rollins coming out to talk with Cody. Why? Why couldn't Cody be upset? Why couldn't Cody getting off the bus? Why couldn't one of the reporters try to approach Cody Rhodes, and Cody Rhodes wasn't having any of it and he walked right past the reporter? Why couldn't it have been Cody getting into the ring and, you know, he's really, really pissed off. He wants The Rock. He wants The Rock tonight, right? And then Seth Rollins comes out, and Seth Rollins tries to offer Cody Rhodes an opportunity to team up with him. But Cody Rhodes, he has a little bit of an edge to him. CM Punk kind of got in his ear a little tiny bit, and he's like, with all due respect, Seth, right now my priority lies with The Rock. And then Seth Rollins gets upset. You see, everybody keeps looking past me. Something along the lines of that. And it gets in Cody Rhodes' face. And he says something a little bit disrespectful. Something along the lines of, maybe The Rock was right. Maybe The Rock was right about your dad, or Roman Reigns was right about your dad. And that gets under Cody Rhodes' skin. And then Cody says something back to Seth Rollins. And then we get a pull-apart brawl. Right? You mean to tell me you can have something along the lines of Rock or Roman Reigns, or maybe even Paul Heyman? Let's use Paul Heyman as a person who could have been a sit-in for Rock and Roman, backstage smiling with the title over his shoulders, watching Cody and Seth Rollins being pulled apart. Rollins is injured right now. You mean to tell me you couldn't pull something off like that? Drew McIntyre, I mean, what? No, he had better CM Punk. My point being is, you mean to tell me you couldn't do something with Seth Rollins on the lines of that, though? Right? Little small things like that. Little small things like that. The same thing can be said about AEW. They're super famous in regards to never really presenting their world champions in the correct light. But you see what I mean? That's just off the top of the dome. Little small things like that can increase the presence of your television show, put some importance on the storylines, get us to engage with it a little bit more. But no. We accept mediocrity because, well, we're not that company over there. This is how things are ran in 2024. You can either deal with it or you can turn the television off. Never having to look at yourself, never having to look at the program that you're watching, never knowing the history of the programming that you're watching, and knowing the things that were done on a consistent basis that had people never wanting to turn the channel, not knowing that what happened about 25 years ago is the main reason why WWE is even relevant today for you to even want to tune into to become a professional wrestling fan. No, it's always look the other direction. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Never try to get better. Don't like it, don't watch it. Now imagine them telling everybody that. Don't like it, don't watch it. Bootlicking WWE fans, bootlicking AEW fans because of the tribalist behavior. It's even worse. I can kind of forgive the young ones. I can forgive the jits. I can forgive the ones who are below the age of, say, 30 years old. Maybe I'll go as low as 25. Because at least you have some people who grew up in the ruthless aggression era, and maybe they were like 8, maybe they were like 7 years old in 2004 or 2003, but you understand very little, but you still have a better understanding as far as how good professional wrestling can be at times. You understand the formula of what gets professional wrestling over when done correctly. And yet you're one of the ones within this tribalist crowd who turns a blind eye to what goes on within WWE and AEW from a creative direction standpoint. And you allow the bullshit to take place because this company is not that company. You're the ones who I really am ashamed of. You're the ones who I look at you guys and I say that you know better. And for shame the ones who come to me and come to everybody else who will tell them, hey, stop talking about it. Stop complaining. Stop complaining. I don't need you to tell me what wrestling can be because I was there. Well, if you know that, then why am I having to tell you and you having to disagree with it? You want better for the future? This ain't better from the future. It's you playing games with a mentality to be displayed for others so you can show unity. Unity with professional wrestling fans that you're already having a unity over in regards to fandom, but it has to be more of the fandom. You have to align on this specific ideology in regards to how professional wrestling, not how it should be, but who should be representing it. That's the sad part. That's the sick part, in my opinion. Does it get better from here? I don't know. We're allowing wrestling fans to play whataboutisms with stories. Never to look at what the hell their company is currently doing at the moment and asking for better. It's, well, what about them over there? That's the third time I'm saying that. What about them over there? And as long as they aren't them, as long as no one's over there who's over here, then I'm A-okay with it, is what they're saying to everybody. Well, guess what? I'm not. I grew up in the era when professional wrestling was much better than this. I grew up in the era where what you call great right now was good back then. I'm not asking for the professional wrestling business to be extravagant. I'm just asking for things to be correct. Big difference. I'm not asking for greatness. I'm asking for things to be correct. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, my name is Devontae. Thank you guys for participating in the poll. Again, you can go check it out if you want to. Like I said, it's meaningless anyways. It was just a trick question that you guys mentality wise, you played directly into my point. Just reflect. That's all I'm asking. Just reflect. My name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. Deuces, P. Ice.